Today I will be reading a short story called The Poet by C.S. Parker. Who's me? He sat with arms stretched out, seeming through minds of their own to be reaching, grabbing for another plane of existence. The desk, 4 legs and various drawers, was made from finely fashioned oak, a slight red hue casting eerie shadow on the wood itself. The desk appeared to be part of him, so much so that if he were to stand up I wouldn't believe in the existence of his legs. An outlet of himself, if you will, grown into his very existence by years and desolate boxes of jelly doughnuts. Only shards remain from past days and empty cups of coffee, allowing him to remain seated day in and day out. He had grown old on Chinese food and pizza. His soft gray hair poured around his head, back, and arms like tears of heaven. Just sitting there, head bent, looking for something lost in a drawer, searching methodically, I thought, through papers, pencils, files, rubber bands, and paper clips. Atop all this was a hat he seemed unable to wear, which appeared to be the object of his ferocious scuffling. Were it not for the fact that it lay thus, I would be totally convinced. The hat, so old and worn by reminiscent handling, was some fossil from the past that kept pushing its way to the future. Facing it up Facing up, it seemed to be looking, rather waiting for heaven. It lay quiet despite the sights and sounds of 1,000 years, being born over and over again through natural reincarnation. Though blue within, blue without, the name of a lover lay on a parcel of the paper above. To my most precious love, it pronounced Lenore, and an uninterpretable babble beneath. It was It was obvious of the intent, but the reasons for this location puzzled me. Not wanting to dwell that long on fate, my intent changed to circumstance. He did not move, waiting only to look at the letters, to look upon that name for love so deep, the name of pure, the name of pure love not to be held contaminated by any force on earth or heaven above. On a shelf of equally beautiful pine lay the collected works of Shakespeare, Poe, Dickinson, Tennyson, and the famous poets that learned through the years of isolation to love. Inside, I was sure that through thorough analysis and marked pages worn and underlined by desire burned in the darkness of listless existences. My curiosity almost got the best of me to read these thoughts collected over such a bleak career of the renowned poet. The walls were dull gray color, though they seemed to lighten the room. There was nothing hung on the wall, but there need not be, for he was a man of vast imagination, a poet who saw much in the gray of everyday nonchalant existences. The room had mysterious aura of sunshine and fields of grass in which children play. I do not know why this thought came to mind. I had no reason to dwell on it, yet I did for some time, until I slowly recuperated, until I until so plagued I sat in the only chair in the room not fully occupied. Slowly recuperating from the cloudy days that covered them, my mind would not let me focus on the table in front of me. It too seemed caught in a vision. When my vision finally returned, though no slight amount of concentration, I saw on the table on which lay a letter surrounded by the necessities of life long lived before the closed doors barred through only in the mind. There were the pencils, the sharpener, many sticks of paper, chicken scratching, and various odds and ends that seemed to be used to construct his thesis on the theory of life addressed to Lenore. Never to be read, it began. Dearest love, Lenore, I have felt the pressure of the days without you, and I feel as one shot his horse to feed his hunger of famine in his mind and soul, while leaving no possible avenues for escape from the bleak black desert. I deeply regret the pain you have had away from me for these years, yet I know not the courage then. On that day in the field where we played and loved and grew, on that day with 1,000 stars in the sky, on that day when we were locked in a love embrace, all you could do was talk about heaven. On that day when we ran through the grass and were simultaneously transformed into vicious beasts. On that day when you took me to the Tree of Burden with a hope for a swing in love, we set out to live apart from no more. On that day you turned so cold to touch. Forgive me, my love, I have not the courage. I should have visualized his hesitation. Instead, I could almost see the scream of frustration. But why envy? Perhaps love creates a fool. He must have before the bullet wreaked the havoc with his brain. Putting my finger in the hole it had left behind, I felt it, if I strained long enough and hard enough, I could bend and warp the very basis on which time was founded to hear that soliloquy and see a field with one not so barren tree, just as he might have. I looked to the ground, then shameful for violating the dead and taking queer fancy from their thoughts, I noticed a revolver laying on the ground, the origin of the rocket that carries to a higher plane when it explodes. Picking up the Smith & Wesson Navy, I held it firmly to my head. The heat was gone from the pearl handle, yet it would return with proper care. This too would be taught to love. Bringing it down, I placed it in my pocket, another relic of a forgotten wars for preeminent love. I turned to leave, then the corner of my eye caught a glimpse of a single motion necessary to bring the sacred relic to heaven. I knew with that sense that you get from working 40 years in the same occupation, call it what you will, but I know that hat was gone. Perhaps it was something inside me which held me back from assuring my premonitions, for those who sleep soundly with private philosophy rarely wish the nightmare of possibility. Coroner's report.